Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great DoK day. Today, I'm here with Lapo and with Arsh to talk to you about how you can leverage stateful workloads on Kubernetes and benefit your developers. My name is Ramiro. I am one of the founders of Octeto, and I am super excited to be here.
I'm Arsh, and I work as a developer experience engineer at Octeto.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lapo, and I'm a senior software engineer at Extendi.
All right, let's get this started then. So Kubernetes. In today's world, Kubernetes needs no introduction. It is the go-to container orchestration system when it's come to production, and for very good reason too. It has excellent capabilities of handling the tasks we have been struggling to do before its arrival. So Kubernetes allows applications to scale much more easily than it was possible before. And as a result, we can now reliably reach a large number of users than was possible before. So what this meant for our data handling systems was that they needed to keep up because these large number of users were generating an even larger amount of data. So that covers about Kubernetes and data, but that's not what this talk is all about, right? So how do developers fit into this? What role do they have? To answer that, I feel like we need to think that after Kubernetes and dealing with all this large amounts of data became normal, the way developers developed applications, that did not change. So we changed how we deployed applications. We started containerizing them. We started writing more and more microservices, but we did not reflect back on how we were developing them. So what is the solution for all of this? The solution is remote dev environments, which leverage Kubernetes underneath. With these remote dev environments, when working on your microservices, instead of running the microservices you require during dev, locally, you would deploy them on a Kubernetes cluster. Let's switch to the next slide to make it clear what happens when you deploy these microservices to production. So once they've been deployed in the cluster, you replace the container running in the cluster with a development container. And this container inherits all the configuration from the original container. And since the configuration is inherited from the original container, everything continues to work as if it's still being deployed in production, except it's not. So, and once this replacement step happens, a file synchronization service gets set up, which syncs the code you write on your local machine with that running inside the dev container. That means any changes you make get transferred to this dev container running in the remote cluster on cloud. So as soon as you hit save after making a change, you will be able to view it exactly like it would look in the deployed version of your application. This is sounding very cool. And now we're going to see this in action. So I'm going to hand it over to Lapo, who's going to show how this is leveraged beautifully at Extendi, and take it from here.
Go ahead.
Cool. Okay, so what we are looking at here is a demo environment of Octeto, which essentially has a Kubernetes cluster underneath. And here, as you can see, I have a Postgres StatefulSets application deployed with a volume attached called PG data. And it all has been deployed inside a namespace called Dolly. So what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to create a snapshot of the volume attached to this Postgres StatefulSets application. Essentially, you can imagine this to be like a Postgres application where you can get the data from production and see the database with data from production. And what I'm going to show you now is that you can essentially create a snapshot of the volume attached and make your developers have their own environment already set up and ready with the data inside without the need of performing seeding operations and all those kinds of stuff. It can be done automatically by creating a snapshot of that volume and apply a configuration, an annotation to the deployment that says that the volume has to get created, starting from that snapshot. So here as you can see, I have these services manifest that declares a Postgres deployment, where I've set some environment variables and the volume. So now I'm gonna go ahead and run Octator op, which essentially is the feature that Arsh mentioned earlier that allows me to connect to the cloud Kubernetes cluster. And what I'm gonna do now is essentially I'm gonna create a container that will act as a proxy, essentially, and will allow it to forward the Postgres application that I have deployed to my local host in order for me to be able to connect to it. So essentially now I'm gonna go ahead and open Beekeeper, which is a Postgres client, and I'm gonna go ahead and select Postgres connection. I'm gonna show you that I can now connect to the Postgres instance that happens to belong to the cloud Kubernetes cluster directly to my local host. So yeah, here I'm connecting to configuring a connection to my local host. The user is going to be Postgres. The password is going to be the one that I've configured here, which is demo, and the default database is going to be Postgres. So I'm going to go ahead and test my connection, and the connection looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and connect, and as you can see, I already have a table here. With some data into it, just a small table with some users into it. And the goal now is to create a snapshot of the volume that contains this data, and then create the same application into another namespace and find out that the data has been created starting from the snapshot that I've created. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and create the snapshot. So I'm going to go ahead and use kubectl -n dolly, which is the namespace I've selected here, where my Postgres belongs. And first of all, I'm going to go ahead and see whether or not volume snapshots happen to be there, and there's no snapshot in it. So I'm going to go ahead and create one. And the snapshot is defined by this manifest here that I call Postgres snapshot. That essentially what is described here is the snapshot name is going to be Postgres, and it's going to be from the persistent volume claim PG data, which is the volume attached to the Postgres StatefulSets application. So I'm going to go ahead and say kubectl -n dolly apply -f Postgres snapshot YAML, and as you can see, I have the snapshot created. So I can go ahead and describe kubectl -n this dolly describe volume snapshots, and as you can see here, I have my hub snapshot created. And so what's next? Essentially now I can stop my connection to my dolly namespace and the Postgres instance. I'm going to switch to another namespace, which is going to be Lapo, a different namespace. As you can see here, the namespace Elisacci is empty, and I'm going to go ahead and deploy the Postgres, and it's going to be potato deploy, and deploy my Postgres to the empty namespace. It's going to do some magic, but essentially what I'm expecting to happen is, due to the fact that I've set up these annotations to my volume, the volume is going to get created starting from the snapshot that I created.
Hold on, the deploy failed.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
Oh,
it's
okay.
Fine. Yeah, it's just the fact that these resource here proxy is not get created, but it's completely fine.
Perfect.
Okay, so yes, as you can see now, the Postgres is getting created, and in a minute, once it gets ready, I will do the same operation I've done earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and run Potato up, and here you go. Connect to the Postgres from the new namespace and find out that the data has already been filled. So I'm going to go ahead and run Potato up and get rid of this shell here. There you go. I'm going to go ahead and open my beekeeper. I'm going to close this connection because otherwise you might think that this is the old one. And that I might be cheating, and creating a new connection, Postgres connection, localhost user is going to be Postgres. It's going to be the same connection I have set up earlier because the environment variables and all those kinds of stuff, so it's the same, but it's going to be a Postgres that belongs to a different namespace. And so the password is going to be demo, and the default database is going to be Postgres. I'm going to go ahead and test the connection. Connection looks good. I will connect. And as you can see, the users table already exists inside the new namespace and has the data filled into it. So how would you imagine a feature like that? You get your data, you dump your production database, you fill a namespace volume with the data you need, then you create a snapshot. And if you have correctly set up the cluster and the manifest, you're gonna have the whole team of your, the whole team being able to create Postgres instance inside their own namespace with the data already filled, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And just to summarize, what you saw that is that now with the use of Octeto, remote dev environments, and volume snapshots, you can now give developers dev environments that not only look like production, they have data, which is something that, as we all know in data and Kubernetes, data is a fundamental part of modern applications. It's not just code, it's also data and what can you do with it. So volume snapshots plus Octeto make that so much easier for developers. And this is something really cool that the team in Extendi are doing. And thank you for sharing. So just to give you a quick, this is what's happening behind the scenes. Volume snapshot is created in one namespace. It gets copied to the other on deployment, and developers now have access to data. And this could be, a full production dump, something that's sanitized, or maybe even, different variations of like all schemas, migrations. There's no limits. Once you have data available as part of your, toolbox for developers, there's a lot of things that can be done. So, it's what I want everybody to get out of this talk is data needs to be part of your dev environment. Remote dev environments allow you to move your development to Kubernetes to have a realistic flow as you write code. Adding volume snapshots and data makes it even more realistic because you can also validate that your data integrates well with your code changes, because at the end of the day, applications without data are not useful to anybody. So I hope you found this useful. Remember, it's all about bridging the gap. It's all about making sure that developers have all the tools they need to write code to ship value. Data, security policies, configurations, Kubernetes. It's all part of the same package. So as you go home and rethink your experience, please take this into consideration. And thank you so much for this. I hope you enjoyed the conference. Lapo, Arsh, thank you so much for joining us today, showing us a really cool demo. And for those of you who are in Valencia, we'll see you at the party. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.